Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, we can, David.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Do
We are live streaming.
Lori,
we're live.
We're live.
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Lori.
Sorry, I was out to lunch there for a second.
Hi.
Hello.
Yep, the whole gang. Thank you.
Is that a Wazoo game?
Yep.
All right.
I like
Go
it.
Cougs.
Go.
Go Cougs. What? Who are they?
Oh, whatever.
Good job, Natalie. Good.
Natalie, I got this out for you. I thought you'd appreciate it.
Oh, wait a minute. I was going to show mine. But it's missing. Let me see if I can
Do you
find
see Berkeley?
a bear sticker.
Do you see Berkeley on their own plane? Is it a little Hot Wheels kind of plane?
I can't think of a clever comeback. No.
Okay, I think everyone ready?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. I call the September 24th, 2020 Peninsula School District Board of Directors regular meeting to order. Please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
Flag
of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty.
with justice for all.
Thank you all and welcome. On March 24th, 2020, the leadership of Washington legislature issued statutory waivers and suspensions related to Open Publics Meeting Act and the Public Records Act. The waivers and suspensions have been extended multiple times, most currently with Proclamation 20-28.9, which extends these waivers and suspensions until October 1st. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.9, our regular meeting is being held virtually. Prior notice has been given to the community regarding how to watch this meeting online and how to listen to the meeting through the telephone. The meeting agenda has been reviewed and we deem all items on the agenda to be routine and necessary. With regard to routine matters, board members have reviewed the agenda and have had the opportunity to clarify with the superintendent prior to the board meeting. Such matters are often processed without additional comment or debate. With that, I ask, are there any changes to the agenda? With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. It has been moved by Natalie and seconded by Lori to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion has been approved. I now introduce Dr. Jarvis and members of his team to give us an update on enrollment. Hello, Dr. Jarvis.
Thank you, Madam President. It's my pleasure to announce, as you well know, that school opened on September 8th. It was the first time in the history of the school district that we opened at full remote for all students. And so it was quite the experience. And as you look at the pictures of all of you and the cabinet and really the entire staff throughout the district, I commend them for the work that went into the opening this fall. We obviously got any number of emails and feedback, but I particularly took pleasure in one that I would say characterized many of the comments, and that was the difference between the springtime closure and what they saw this fall on behalf of their children. I think the reference was made, whether it's mathematically correct or not, 10,000% better than springtime for the children. So I just say a deep thanks to all of the work that went into trying to do something that we've never done before, and that's a fully remote opening, but at the same time have a schedule and the assignments and the connections between teachers and students. And I again repeat saying thank you to all. We have a second issue, which I think is somewhat interesting because it almost is the second opening. On Monday, the 28th, coming up this next Monday, we will have the K-1 students returning to the school in person. And for the K-1, we'll be running that dual platform of those parents who wanted their children in school in person will be taking place on Monday. And those who wanted their children to remain full remote are doing that. And again, the work which was taking place during these first couple weeks of school was immense to be able to achieve that. And I'd like to add to my report on that K-1 opening that we will have a couple people speak, and one of whom I'm going to ask would be Karen Anderson, because there was a great deal of interest in how do the schools actually reopen for children and keep it safe for children and staff. And Karen Anderson and the operations side of the district had a major hand in every day, long days, long hours, and enlisting really the help of the staff and the community and the state, and achieving the safety and health protocols that needed to be in place. So Karen Anderson, would you offer any comments you'd care to add for what it's taken for safety and health for reopening on the 28th with kindergarten and first graders?
Yes, what I would say is that we have worked with all of our buildings. We have site COVID coordinators in each of our buildings. And over the last couple of weeks, they've been working on site COVID safety plans that were finalized at the beginning of this week. Along with those were maps of where their buildings and where their health checkpoints were going to be for visitors, staff, students, as they come into the buildings. And those have been distributed to staff in the building and have been posted to their school websites. So this was a tremendous effort to make sure that everyone in the building understood what the safety protocols were specific to that building, that are also in line with the district safety protocols in the reopening guide. There's a lot of work that's gone behind the scenes, getting the cleaning equipment for teachers. What I would say is that all teachers have been provided with sanitation wipes for their personal workspace. They have been provided with cleaning soap and water, cleaning bottles for cleaning other areas that are related to students, should they need to. They have paper towels, they have gloves. We have lots of personal protective equipment that has been supplied. We have ordered through the Emergency Operations Center over in Tacoma. And we have been really successful at getting a lot of the supplies that we ordered. We have a lot of hand sanitizer. We have lots of masks. We have disposable masks. We have face shields. We have KN95 masks. We have N95 masks. So we have lots of PPE on hand, and we have more on order so that there are shipments coming in on a regular basis. So we have really worked hard to, this week we are getting our screeners aware of what they need to wear for PPE and what their process is for screening both students and staff when they enter the building. We've worked at getting attestation forms out to families so that students have attestation forms for the first day. And so we've been working with buildings on that. So there's a list of things that we've been working on. I probably am missing half of them, but it's been a busy week, but I think we're ready. Still working on a few little things, but we're there.
I would thank you, Ms. Anderson. I would also call on John Helwick and Dan Gregory, our two assistant superintendents, who really had I think I can describe it as the bulk of the K-1 preparation, working with principals, working with the staff, and making all the side of it work for kids, and ultimately just the short phrase of making it work. So John and Dan, would you offer any comments you have about the K-1 readiness for opening on Monday?
Yeah, sure. I'll start by backing up a little bit. At the end of August, we sent out a survey to gauge interest in in-person learning and remote learning across all grades and all buildings. And we got pretty consistently between 55 and 60% that said they were interested in in-person learning. And then in mid-September, we announced that we'd be inviting, along with some of our other student groups, we'd also be inviting back K-1 students for in-person learning. And the final declarations for those came in at about 77% preferring in-person learning. And that'll be starting on Monday, the 28th. This higher number created some challenges to have students back safely in classrooms with physical distancing, and also to be able to have our remote teachers teaching our remote students as well. But we worked together, and everyone's been very flexible, and staff have been great, and we are going to be ready to do that. So that really impacted, our ability. We're looking to determine how much space in our schools we'd need and which classrooms would be offering the in-person learning. One of the things that this kind of created was a need for some shifting around of students, because in two ways. One is, if you think about teacher A, she has 20 students, and 10 of them select remote learning and 10 select in-person. And the teacher next door, 18 select in-person and 2 select remote. So in order to balance it, we had to ask some students to move, and our building administrators are communicating and our staff with parents about those moves. And then also we have now this group of students, about 240 total in K-1, that are going to be choosing to still learn fully remotely. And because our teachers are now going to be teaching in person all day, we needed to shift staffing around in order to provide teachers for those fully remote students. And so again, some of our students, in fact, most of our students who are choosing to fully learn remotely in the K-1 would now be assigned to a different teacher. And we have a great group of 10 teachers that are going to be doing that. And they're going to be, if they haven't already, been contacting some of their students and welcome them to the new teacher. And they're going to be ready to roll on Monday as well.
I'll go ahead and jump in, John. Thank you. As John said, we got an excellent response from parents, and our building administrators did a really nice job following up with parents that we hadn't heard from in terms of making phone calls with their staff, so that we had all of our students accounted for. John alluded to staffing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about classroom preparation as well. I would say those two items are where we've spent most of our time for the last 2 weeks. And as John mentioned, I'll start with the remote side. With roughly 240 students requesting, actually exactly 240 students requesting to continue with remote learning, that drove 10 teachers. And so we have 10 teachers assigned to those 240 kids. What we did with the students that requested remote learning is we coupled buildings together to create sections. And what I mean by that is, if I used an example, Purdy Elementary had 15 kindergartners requesting remote learning, and Voyager Elementary had 9. And so we looked for common numbers like that that would give us average class sizes in the remote side that were reasonable. So those 15 students at Purdy and the 9 kindergartners at Voyager were coupled to make a section of 24, and a teacher was assigned. We ended up assigning 4 teachers to kindergarten groups, 5 teachers to first grade groups, and 1 teacher to handle the students at Pioneer that are in a K-1 group. And so they have their own assigned teachers. Teachers were assigned, first of all, teachers had the opportunity, educators had the opportunity to work with our human resources department to notify them if they were considered high risk. Seniority and high risk status were the factors that we used to assign those teachers to the remote side. I just have to take all of our hats off to Caroline Antholt and her team in HR. They have been working late into the evenings on this and really getting this staffing down. They've done a wonderful job, and it has not been easy. So I just want to compliment them. Once we had the remote side staffed, we had to look at the number of students in each of the buildings and at each class level at each building that were there for in-person instruction. As John mentioned, that required us to adjust some of the class sizes. It required us to adjust some of the section numbers at kindergarten or first grade in some buildings. And as we adjusted those down to accommodate the 10 teachers that went to the remote side, there were also some moves that needed to be made from students to different teachers. And so our principals are busy working on that as we speak. They've got most of that done, and we'll be communicating that soon. I would also just like to add, all of this staffing work, again, was not easy. Caroline and her team did a wonderful job, and it was done very collaboratively with PEA in adherence with our MOU and our contract, and it resulted in educator reassignments and in some cases involuntary transfers. But it was done very collaboratively, and just really proud of the work that was done and that John and I got to be a part of. Shifting from staffing to classroom space, John and I both did walkthroughs with PEA leadership, and we were assessing classroom size and classroom capacity. Again, a very collaborative process. When we went through that, it did require that, number one, we ended up moving some teachers to different locations in the buildings into classrooms that could accommodate more students. So again, just appreciate the collaborative approach and the teacher willingness to do that, and to adjust how they normally set up their classroom to accommodate the maximum number of students. Some classrooms needed to be restructured, which means we needed to move some furniture and move some items out of classrooms. We ended up moving furniture within buildings, and sometimes we ended up moving furniture across buildings to make that happen. I would just like to highlight our custodial crews, which have done a marvelous job moving furniture, and also our tech folks, because we asked them to move some projection devices also to make this happen. Finally, I just would want to express appreciation to our building administrators. They have been great creative problem solvers, and express a great deal of appreciation to our teachers for their flexibility and creative problem solving. Removing rugs, maximizing spaces, all with safety-driven changes in mind. It's going to change the way they teach and instruct, and we just appreciate that. And we know regardless of the changes, when students start on Monday, those teachers are going to make those students feel safe at home and valued when they come in the door. So thank you to our building administrators and teachers as well.
And I'd just like to,
Yeah,
I'd like to echo that and just say 100% amazing flexibility. And we know it's difficult for teachers who are used to, bringing their kids up close on the rug and and those great experiences and having to adjust, but we really appreciate that. And also want to just thank and look forward to the great job that we know those 10 remote teachers are going to do. And as I said, they be letting their kids know that, even though you're shifting teachers, that your learning remote is still going to be the great experience that it was before. And then, now we've got all these kids coming back into our schools for K-1. And of course, the parents have a lot of questions about how is this going to be different from a usual experience? For kindergarten teachers, this is their first experience, or for kindergarten families, this is their first experience in our public schools. And for first grade parents, it's, how is it going to be different than it was in their kindergarten year? Tons of questions about everything from safety to what's the, how's the recess going to work? How's the lunch going to work? Everything from drop off to pick up and going home. And our staff have been doing a great job of getting that information out to our families to say, these are what the changes are going to look like. These are what the safety precautions are going to be. Here's what drop-off is going to look like. All of those different pieces are going to be communicated to our families. And then when we get started, new questions will pop up, and they're going to keep those lines of communication open so that everybody knows what to expect and be ready for kind of our next phase, which will be jumping off on Monday.
And I'll close with just one comment. Appreciate all the efforts, all in making sure that our classrooms are ready to go on Monday, our parents are ready to go on Monday, and most importantly, our teachers and students are ready to go on Monday. One quick anecdote is I was on the phone with a kinder parent today at one of our schools who was anxiously awaiting what that return was going to look like. And we had a great discussion, most of it around safety. And anecdotally, the parent shared how the kinder teacher, who's been connecting with the student for the last 2 weeks, has been working with students the past week or so about coming back. And the conversation was, hey, here's what we're going to do when we come back. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's how we're going to wear our masks. And you all can do it because you're big people and you're school age students now. And the parent was just so appreciative, not only of the intentional preparation to bring the students back, but the positive approach the teacher took in preparing the students to come back in this whole new world of social distancing and mask wearing and everything else. So that anecdote, I think, kind of sums it up and says we're going to be ready to go on Monday. Thank you.
I would add one piece that as we opened on September 8th, and I mentioned that this was the first ever fully remote opening, and then as you've heard the description of what's taking place as we begin to bring back the K-1, you recognize that we still have over 7,000 students on fully remote, and that this year and this fall, the full remote has been and will be the backbone of the system as we try to figure out some of the other issues. Chris Hagel, I've not warned you, but I would ask you, as I say thank you to the tech staff and all of the work, the hot spots, the working with parents to make it happen. I apologize for Chris's background, if you're a Dynamo Husky, but Chris Hagel, thank you. And I would ask you to offer any comments about this fall and the reopening.
Sure, thanks, Art. As I was sharing with Art, it's definitely the busiest one of my entire career. So we're seeing a volume, including support for parents and support for students, of about twice of what a normal year looks like for us. But it's going, and we're getting through it. We've deployed about 350 hotspots now to families. We received a shipment of about 150 more yesterday. Most of those will go out tomorrow. We had a backlog in requests. Some of the things we're seeing is even families that have pretty decent internet, once you get 3 or 4 kids on it, it makes it tough to use. So it's pushing us a lot for hotspots and providing internet to kids. But we're really happy with what we're seeing as far as engagement and the amount of stuff happening in Schoology. I think some of the Zoom things that challenges we had at the beginning of the year are starting to iron themselves out now, as kind of could be expected. So teachers are evolving and adapting and improving every day, and it's just great to see all of that. So
Thank you, Chris.
sure.
I would close this portion with the recognition that for a whole community and really a very broad community worth of parents throughout this multiple school districts, this has been an opening that is unlike any other. It has challenged families for their childcare. It's challenged them for who can be there. People like Chris who work with them on trying to figure out the hot spots and why it wasn't working for kids have just been invaluable, but it's been an entire staff. I would also now hand it back to Karen Anderson for an actual report on the enrollment, because it's indicative of how difficult this opening has been on schools throughout the nation and particularly throughout our region. And I asked Karen if she would present some of the data, because it puts the school district, it's a very significant opening, and there's some very significant issues that have arisen along with a very fine opening. But Ms. Karen Anderson, would you comment and demonstrate what you?
Dr. Jarvis, may I please interrupt for a moment? I'm sorry. I was just going to see if any board members had questions on the K-1 information before we got into the budget. Did anyone have any questions or comments? Natalie?
Are we providing transportation for the K-1 for the first group coming back?
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. Softball.
Yes, we transportation has routes. We have, we're providing routes for all of the elementaries, for the K-1s. Typically, we have more buses coming out because we're transporting more students, but so we've reduced the number of buses that are coming out, but we do have routes set up and they are posted on the website.
Great, thank you.
Other members? My question is then, I just want confirmation that we are meeting or exceeding all CDC, LNI, OSPI guidelines, and they have been communicated in a somewhat consistent basis to all of our schools and staff members.
Short answer is yes, we have and we are. We will continue, and opening with the K-1 was very intentional so that we could take that step and figure out if there was anything that was needed or that we had missed, anything that needed, we had a good plan, but it needs to be implemented properly, such as kids' arrival in school and attestation forms and temperature taking. So much of that is to be tested as the first kids come back. But at this point, it's been a plan that's been put in place and has all of the elements you asked for. Now I'm going to ask Karen Anderson again to confirm that, because she really has headed up all of the work and has organized the staff for what I'll call accountability to make sure that all the safety measures were not only in place, but that they were implemented. Karen, can you give a confirmation?
Yeah, I would say that we've worked really hard to make sure that they are in place, that we have everything documented in our site plans, that our site COVID coordinators at each building, they've got a plethora of resources as far as PPE and information guidance. Sarah Hoover, our risk management compliance officer, is working with all of them and staying up on the latest changes. As you know, there's always changes. It seems like as soon as we print something, then there's another version of it that comes out. So I would say that we're trying to keep up with everything, and I feel like we're in good shape at this point.
Excellent. Yes, I've been hearing really, really good feedback from our schools. I know that each school has a different way of communicating with their families, but hopefully our district communication department can have a central resource where every school's protocols and procedures are posted so that there's at least one consistent base of where that information is. Because I know I hear some schools have received it, some don't know where it quite is. So hopefully we can help that on a district level.
So I can answer a little bit to that. So what we did was for the site safety plans, we tried to keep it within the same template so they all look very similar.
Okay.
We asked them to be posted to the website, the school website, so that staff can find them at any time, or families for that particular school. And what I would say is that communications assisted the schools in making sure that they were posted. So my belief is that they should be pretty common and easy to find.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. And I'll just lastly state, I appreciate the tours that you're going to organize for the board members to go see how the schools are looking at that, and our kids are and staff are truly in a safe environment, and just so we can see firsthand to know how it's working. So thank you very much for coordinating those, and we look forward to those. David.
Yeah, I appreciate Natalie's question about, I believe she's the one to ask about transportation. Previously, I'm at another board meeting, we had talked about the what is going to be happening with the students that are riding the bus. And I know that, are we going to be taking, we're not going to be taking temperature as they board the bus. Is a bus driver going to get the attestation forms that say they're okay? How will that work? Do the kids have to wear their masks on the bus? Can you tell me what, how that's going to look for the parents?
The students need to have their attestation forms. They will need to turn those in at the school, but they should have an attestation form. They should be wearing masks. If they don't have a mask, we have disposable masks available, and we will ask them to wear the masks. The drivers have appropriate PPE, so they're supported with that. They are not necessarily the keeper of the attestation form. We don't want to leave a student on the side of the road if they don't have an attestation form. So we will have them come in and they'll go through a special health screening when they get to school.
And I don't expect the bus driver is going to be the keeper of the, you know, as far as making sure the younger kids keep their mask on while they're on the bus. What happens there? I mean, do they just do their best?
Well, what I would say is that we will ask them. What I would say is if it becomes an issue, the drivers would handle it the normal way that they would handle any type of, you know, discipline or conflict with a student, and they would refer the information over to the building administrator, and then the building administrator would work with the student.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, Natalie.
I just had one follow-up question to the attestation forms. Have we looked at doing an app or something electronic rather than having someone bring a piece of paper every day, which is what I assume we're doing?
Yeah, we have, I think the challenge that we have with an application is that the applications go into a certain database, but we have multiple health screening checkpoints. So it would mean that we would have to have lists of students of who have turned in attestations and who have not. And so the challenge is, when's the most updated list, and finding the student on that list. So it's more of a paper process as far as or can they hand something to somebody and they receive the attestation and then they just take the temperature check, which is a much faster process. So, but we're still looking into options and possibilities. As we bring in more students, we may find that we need to find an easier process or have multiple, more health screening processes so we can get the kids in faster.
Well, thank you all for getting our kindergartners, first graders in. Almost 80% of them. That's fantastic. And I can't imagine, I know that every grade we bring in more is going to be another puzzle to solve. So thank you all for your work on all of that. Dr. Jarvis, did you have something else before we move on to the budget?
I was just going to offer the comment, even as you can see that one piece, how complex it is. And yes, the mask requirement is a minute, it has to be in place in order for children to be in the school, but trying to implement it in a way that's never been done before is just, these are just indicative of just a few of the seemingly thousands of pieces that needed to fall into place. And so I just repeat, the work that's been done is amazing to get to that point. And Monday will be that launch point that we get to see. I'm sure there will be something in the system that we find that didn't go exactly the way it was supposed to, and we'll have to figure out a better way to do it. But right now, it's been well planned, and I believe we have all those bases covered. So, but we did, just to go back to Karen Anderson for a minute, we did have our opening enrollment, and that's a picture that we don't normally see. So I would ask Karen to explain what we do see in our enrollment and what the implications of that on the system and the budget. Karen?
Sure. Before I share my screen, I wanted to just preface this with, typically when we take enrollment for September, we can count students in the first 4 days. So if they attend in any of the first 4 days of school, we can count them. So that's our typical process. For this September, OSPI worked with districts and recognized that with remote learning, it was going to be a lot more difficult to capture actual attendance and what our enrollment might look like. So they have allowed us to count any student that has attended, any enrolled student that has attended any day in the month of September. Along with that, typically our enrollment was due on September 23rd. They backed that up to the 28th. So that will be our reporting date. They've also allowed us to go back and revise, should we have knowledge of attendance based on work completed or work produced, and the teachers can account for that attendance, we can go back and we can revise our September count. So, so there are some options there for us. So let's see. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Oops. So our September counts are significantly under our projections. And so I want to walk you through this. I'm comparing to March of 2020, which was the last day that we had students in person. It was our last actual student enrollment reporting for 2019-20. In September, for our September count, our K-5 enrollment is coming in at 3,553 students, FTE, compared to our budget projection of 3,983. So we are about 430 students below projections at the at the K-5 level. If we compare that to March, the difference is about 482 students. And this is FTE, so this is not actual head count, but it's FTE, full-time equivalents. For our 6 through 8, our middle schools, our numbers for September are right around 1,970 compared to our budget projections of 2,106. So we're down in the middle schools about 136 students. And compared to March, where we were in March, we're down about 210. For the 9 through 12, or for the high schools, we are at 2,575. And compared to our budget projections of 2,729, we're down about 154 students, FTE. Compared to March, it's only 85. Some of this is that we still don't know what's going to happen with Running Start. So Running Start numbers have been pulled out. Students have been, if they've indicated that they're going to be Running Start, we'll have a better idea in October as to who is attending Running Start and if those numbers have gone up, or if we truly have lost, those numbers in the high school. So it's a little bit deceiving. So district-wide, we are about 720 below projections at this point in time. And compared to last March, we're down about 776. So, a couple of comments. Enrollment impacts. We believe that there is a significant number that have chosen either to homeschool or they've done choice transfers to other remote learning platforms. We are still working on the attendance for remote learning. So we're working with the guidance that we've gotten from OSPI. And so there might still be the possibility that we can capture some enrollment for September. The financial impact for 720 students below projections is about a $7 million revenue loss for state apportionment. This will also generate some revenue reductions for grants and programs that relate to student population and student enrollment. It's a large number. I think our strategy at this point is this isn't a doom and gloom picture because this is a very unusual year. We're starting out in a remote setting. We don't really know where this is going to go. Things could get better and we could have a lot more students return to us in the spring should we be able to bring more students back into our buildings. So we believe that at this point we have a healthy fund balance, and we think that some of that will help us to absorb these impacts. We need to start to evaluate what the real situation is. We need to look at our expenditures. If we can hold on some of the planned expenditures, we will do that. But we're going to start looking at what are the savings that we can incur right now. Unfortunately, we are running a very inefficient system right now. We have class sizes that are significantly smaller than normal, and that's based on social distancing. So we do have some of those challenges. We are running our HVAC systems. We are incurring additional energy costs because we're running our HVAC systems more, longer periods, so that we can maintain good ventilation with bringing more outside air into our buildings to create good ventilation. And one of the other things that we're dealing with is our transportation. We are creating unique routes that aren't necessarily efficient. And so there are additional costs that we are incurring for some of these things that we're doing. It's not bad, but we just have to find ways that we know we have some increased costs. We just have to find ways where we can kind of minimize some of our costs. We know that some of the impacts will hit fund balance. We're in the process of closing out 2019-20. And there are some costs that we did not incur at the latter part of the school year last year. And so there are some savings. And so the ending fund balance will probably be higher than it normally is. And so we anticipate that will help absorb some of these additional impacts for what's happening. And as I said, we don't know what's going to happen. What we're seeing is if we're bringing students back into school, we may be able to bring even more students back in the springtime, and we may see students starting to return. So we have to look at what the impacts are for this year, what we can absorb, what we can address, and how we can address it. And then I think what we need to do is start looking at what are we going to do for next year. If things change for the better and we're past this pandemic, the hope would be that our students would return. And so we have to anticipate that. So it's not a case of slashing the budget and getting rid of staff, because we may very well need them in the subsequent year if we're able to bring, get past this pandemic and go back to a more normal operation. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm gonna be working on a more detailed enrollment report that I'd like to bring to you in October. But we want to look at some of the numbers and see if we can give you some additional information.
And Madam President, that would conclude my superintendent's report, but certainly open to questions.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Dr. Jarvis. David?
Yeah, Karen, I mentioned at a couple past board meetings about the what if, depending on how many students we ended up not having come back. I believe it might have been at the last board meeting when we discussed the budget. How long would it take? I know that our current budget's baked in, so we're not really worried about funding for the remainder of this calendar year, but for our budget year, since it's split, when will we see the financial impact really hit the school district from the state? I believe it's January timeframe. Then is the state, so I got like a 10-part question. So let you answer that first so I don't get it too washed down. So when will we see the hit from the 700 plus students we don't have?
That would be in January when they convert the funding to actual enrollment. So currently the apportionment for the months of September through December is based on what we anticipated for our budget. Now, we don't get 50% of that by January. So if our enrollment does increase over the next few months, then, you know, it's based on the average. So, but it's trued up starting in January. And then it would be over the next months through August that they would.
Okay, and then, so the state pays the school district based on how many students are enrolled, and that would take, they would take that number based on September 28th?
They do an average. They base it on an average. So it's an average of 10 months. So it's September through June. So in January, it's the current average where it's at. Then they would do the calculation. And then we always get a percentage of the revenue each month. So there's a different percentage that we get each month. So if we were still short $7 million, we wouldn't lose all of that $7 million in January. It would
Okay.
just
And then when the state goes back and sees how many kids we had enrolled in September, and then starts to average that out in October, November, December, and let's just say we're average 600 kids less than projected, will the state back debit the school district? Meaning, do we have to pay that overspend back to the state?
no, because what happens is that when they true it up in January, they recalculate our total and they say, okay, this is what your new total is. So we're going to take away what you've already received, and then you get a percentage of that of the new amount for January. So we're not penalized, and they don't take it back. It's just we would have a reduced funding amount. So we might not get as big an apportionment in January.
Okay. And then I know we talked, we like to keep our fund balance between like 4 to 6%. And typically there's about a 6 million in reserve in our fund balance. And so if, I asked this, I believe, at the last board meeting as well, is when would we see that fund balance start to dip maybe towards the 4% or even below that? When would you anticipate that? You mentioned savings. When would you anticipate us maybe starting to get towards the bottom end of that fund balance percentage?
Well, I would say that we're going to be looking at that no matter what. What I would say is that in January, when they true things up, with the state with actuals, we're going to have a pretty good idea of where we're at. And at that point, I would report to you where I think we're going to end up. That's probably the first time that I would be able to say, this is where I think we're going to go. But again, it depends on what's happening with COVID and the pandemic. If we see that things are actually getting better and we think that we're going to be adding more students and building that enrollment over, which is not typical, because typically we lose enrollment over the spring as students exit the system. But we may see that more students want to come back because we can bring students back. So it's kind of a guessing game right now. So I think we're just month by month.
Okay, my last one. Thank you, Madam President, for bearing with me. My last one would be, you mentioned that the loss in enrollment could impact other areas, not just money from the state, but possibly from the federal government or other sources of revenue, perhaps even special ed or anything like that. I know we initially had talked about bringing the special ed group students back before the general population because they were the most in need. And I know we're bringing K-1 back next week, but where are we on the special ed students? And have we seen any drop off in our special ed students so far in enrollment? So if you could answer those, I'd appreciate it.
I don't actually have the numbers for special ed at this point because there's a different person that calculates the special ed enrollment and then provides it to us. What I would say is I don't think that has dropped as significantly as our general ed population. So I don't know that there will be as many impacts to the special ed funding based on students disappearing. I think our students are still with us, special ed students are with us, and we are bringing them back into the buildings and we are serving them. Some of them are choosing to continue to do remote, but there are some, but I believe that we're not seeing the same decrease in numbers there.
I'd like to add to that. It's more of a question, but another shout out that I forgot to make earlier is John Yeloise and his team have been doing extraordinary work with all of our special ed students. And I believe that most those wanting to come back are also coming back on Monday as well. So not only our K-1 population, but that population as well back into our schools on Monday. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Other questions for Karen? Chuck?
So you mentioned that the count to the state was due on September 28th. And maybe I missed this. So what happens in December, January when that enrollment goes up? Will they revise their numbers?
So what happens is that typically our enrollment count is the first day of every month.
Okay.
What they're recognizing is that there are some students that are, they're not able to attend the class during the class time. And so they're accessing that outside of the class time, but they're doing the work and they're turning it into their teachers. And so the teachers are able to add them as attending based on the work that's been completed. And so there's kind of a lag in how we can report attendance and capture the enrollment. So OSPI is trying to find a way that it's not hard and fast on the first day of the month, as much as they're trying to give us that opportunity to account for as much enrollment as we can because of the remote learning setting.
Okay. So I got one more question then. A little later on, we're going to be looking at our 6-year capital improvements, capital facilities plan. With these change in enrollments, does that affect that?
Not at this point. It does not, because this is based on where we're at right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Chuck. Lori or Natalie, any questions?
I just have a simple clarification question, Karen. When you refer to spring, I know several times you were saying in the spring when we bring back more students. My assumption is that you're using the word spring as a general reference to in the future. You know, like because I'm just thinking if persons are just tuning in and they might think I missed an announcement, who's coming back in the spring, you know, you just meant like henceforward when we bring back more grades, correct?
What I would say is that I think we all hope that somewhere along the line we're going to get through this pandemic and we're going to get through the flu season and things are going to get a lot better and we're going to be able to get out of, you know, the requirements that are set for pandemic, and we're going to start to, you know, go back to maybe more of a normal setting. Maybe you don't have to do social distancing, not have to wear face masks, but we don't know that. But I don't know how soon that would be. I guess I would hope that it would be in the spring, but we don't know that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Natalie?
Just a quick comment, really. I appreciate your comment that it's not doom and gloom, one, and that there are ways to save money without cutting staff. And I just would like to say that I think it's all of our sincerest hope to maintain everyone's jobs. It's been a crazy year and we've seen people losing their jobs in our community, and it's something that I hope to preserve with our schools. We desperately need all of our professionals for to make this work. So thank you for working on other avenues to make those savings.
Thanks, Natalie. And I echo that. Coming into the meeting tonight, knowing some of the numbers, hearing that it's not doom and gloom makes me feel a little bit better. And Karen, I've been listening and watching you work for the last 6 years, and I feel confident in that statement that you make. So thank you. Knowing that we have a significant decrease in our state funding is a little daunting. And you think, okay, we have less students, so we need less teachers. But in fact, we need more teachers because you can't have a class of 20 anymore. So as we bring kids back, we need more teachers. And to figure that all out is going to be quite interesting. And I go back to thanking Dan and John and Karen and Caroline for figuring this out, and for the coordination with our principals and teachers. So I don't think I have any questions. Anybody else have questions before we move on? Okay, thank you again all. Okay, we now move into, Dr. Jarvis, thank you for your superintendent's report. Sorry. We move on to comments from our community. We will be taking public comment tonight. Prior notice has been communicated to the public on how to submit their comments in writing. All commentators participating via Zoom are in an online waiting room and will be allowed one at a time into the meeting to speak to the school board for up to 3 minutes each. Please note this is an opportunity to speak to the board, and the board will listen, but not engage in dialogue or offer a response. Pursuant to board policy 1430, the president may exercise discretion to interrupt or terminate an individual's statement when it is personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Thank you for respecting these guidelines. And as I mentioned, written comment has been received. All written comment has been received by the board. So thank you all for those comments. And with that, I start with Keir Adamson. Hi, Keir. You're on mute.
Hi, sorry about that. I was actually wondering, could I switch with my brother? I think he's got some stuff to say first. Is that okay?
That's fine. And your brother, if you could introduce themselves, please. He just needs to introduce himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Where is he?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Finlay. Hi, Finlay.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Good, thank you.
Give me 1 second and I'll get set up and I can make my comment.
Okay, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you. My name is Finlay Adamson. I am the Harbor class of 2018, first ever school board representative from Gig Harbor to the school board. So I'm here in reference to comments that Board Director Chuck West made on Facebook last week, asserting that disproportionate
And
arrest—
Finlay, I'm going to remind you that we cannot have any public personally directed comments tonight. So if you'd like to make a general comment, we'd appreciate that.
Sure, I will modify my statement. Interrupt me if I'm not doing so, but I will just continue and let me know. So there were statements made from people on the board asserting that the fact that inner city Black men commit, the fact that disproportionate arrests of Black people in Pierce County is due to the fact that quote unquote inner city Black men commit a disproportionate amount of violent crime. And that quote unquote Black men being taught to view themselves through Hollywood and Pierce unquote is the cause of Black crime. This member of the board, not naming names—
I'm going to ask, because that members of the board can be identified. So this is a personally directed comment. So pursuant to our policy, you'll have to make a more general statement.
Okay, I'll try my best. Again, interrupt me if I'm wrong. Thank you. Okay, so we believe racist statements in general are should not be made by the board. And so myself, Kier, the rep from the Peninsula School, from Peninsula High School that was on there, Dora Vaughn at the time, and the rep from Henderson Bay at the time we were on the board, Fauna Engstrom, wrote a letter saying that statements like these are racist, not factually based, and actually really dangerous and worrying. They're racist because they come from a long history of racist dog whistles that blame individual Black people for the results of structural problems in our society and economy. They're false because, as we did in a letter that we provided to the school board, we provide multiple statistics of police discrimination against unarmed and innocent Black people. We provide a history of racist and exclusionary government policies that stole the wealth of Black communities. And we provide examples of how modern school districts and boards perpetuate these inequalities through their policies. We believe that this is a far more evidenced and convincing case than has otherwise been provided. So my brother's going to talk more about the response, if that's not too personal, but we've been really disappointed with what we've received from the board in general. We believe that the board needs to take accountability for statements like these because it creates a dangerous environment for non-white students, and it creates an environment where statements like these are allowed and even encouraged. Yeah, so there's a specific statement that the board sent us that said that, quote unquote, we have and will continue to strive to be an organization focused on eliminating racism, institutional bias, and racial and other inequalities. And we just like to say that this is incompatible with the statements that are currently being made, and that action needs to be taken, direct action and public action to denounce comments like these.
Thank you, Finlay. Kier, you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. So again, stop me if I'm not being general enough. Okay, so my name is Kier Adamson. I was on the board for a couple years ago, and I was part of the first Gig Harbor group of students. So I spent a lot of time on the board. I met a bunch of great people who are on the board right now, and I was told that my voice really mattered, and I hope that's still true tonight. So without being too general or without being too specific, I'd like to say that racist myths that say Black people commit more crime based on Black culture and Hollywood and peers probably are, they're just racist myths. And if you look into sort of any economic or historical analysis of this, you'll see redlining or the GI Bill or over-policing or racial bias in the criminal justice system. You can't just blame it on culture because that's a racist myth, right? If you look at the evidence, when Black and white people in neighborhoods live with equal income, they commit the same rate of crime. So it's not something inherent within Black people's culture that say that's destructive and harmful. And saying that is a racist myth. So this isn't just like a difference of opinions, and like I'm not just some like liberal trying to like control everyone. I'm saying, this is a racist myth. It shouldn't be propagated by people in power. Also, I would like to say that my messages here and the messages expressed in my brother's letter that was very factually correct, very respectful, they do not border on fascist behavior. Any sort of history of fascism will clear that up. If you can see any sort of like trying to stop public comment based on appealing to your power, and by saying, don't attack me because I have power in this community, that directly applies to some sort of fascist ideal if there is in this society. I don't think this situation talks anything about fascism, and I think that anyone who complains about us trying to stop these racist myths from propagating and calling us fascists as a result are really misleading everything and just trying to get away with saying whatever they want to say. I feel like the school board response to this, it was kind of just 2 paragraphs with no specific response about what happened. I think that's pretty disappointing. I really respect this board. I really respect what it had to say. And I felt like my voice was being heard while I was on it. I don't feel like that anymore. It's not just me and my brother. A lot of people were upset about this on the website in general. A lot of people are upset about it in this community. And I think it's harmful that not only no action is being taken, but there's not even a statement.
And Finlay, excuse me, Kiera, I'm going to ask that you stay away from talking about any incident about a specific board member. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just saying that these racist myths should not be propagated by anyone, especially people in power. And I would rather that the school board take strong action against this. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Cody Russell. Cody? I think you're muted. There we go. Hi, Cody.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't like my wife's computer. I apologize. All right, thank you
You're
so
on.
much.
You're on and we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First, I would like to express my deep gratitude and appreciation to both Finlay and Keir Adamson for speaking truth to power. I deeply appreciate that. And I think that I am grateful to live in a community where we have young individuals who are leading us towards better versions of ourselves. So thank you for their leadership. I am concerned about decision-making process, the involvement or the pathway with which we're involving teachers and parents in these decision-making process, and the priorities that are guiding decisions and choices right now. The school district has repeatedly indicated that equity would be the top priority, and we were proud to see this commitment in the initial phase of the plan and the dial, focusing on students who need additional support and services and have the most barriers to receiving their constitutional right to ample educational services here in Washington State via remote learning and remote service delivery. Welcoming all kindergarten and first grade students back to in-person is not equitable and will likely increase the risk of the school district not being able to maintain and provide stable, necessary services to the students who need in-person support the most. Those students on IEPs, English language learning students, and the other students that you've already identified that have the most barriers and challenges to learning remotely. Giving teachers and parents a 2-week notice should be explored and reconsidered. Is 2 weeks enough time for teachers to make all the necessary changes that they need to ensure child and student safety? I was amazed at the amount of work that they've already done. And I'm nervous about the potential oversights when you're trying to do so many changes so rapidly. Is 2 weeks enough time for parents to make the new childcare arrangements that they'll need to make? Humans can withstand immense stress when it is predictable, moderate, and controlled. In fact, it builds our resiliency. We fear that advancing through the stages on the dial this rapidly will likely result in classroom quarantines, closures, kids being sent home for extended periods of time as we try and identify and track and do all of the contact tracing, which adds to the unpredictability and the uncontrolled stress for families and students. The majority of the public health professionals right now are concerned and agreeing that as we head into the flu season, it is likely that the situation with the pandemic will actually worsen.
And Chris, we've got quite a few speakers tonight, and so that was your 3 minutes. If you have a quick closing statement, we'll move on. Okay. Thank you. All right. Next up, thank you, Cody. Next up is Chris Covert. Hi, Chris. I think you're muted.
All right, am I on?
You are, Chris. We can hear and see you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking my comment. I am parent of students at Gig Harbor and Goodman, husband of an elementary STEM specialist. And for 20 years, I've been the debate coach and a social studies teacher at Gig Harbor High School. And first off, I do want to thank everyone, teachers, district admin, support personnel who've worked really hard to make our first few weeks of distance learning go so well. My children have had good experiences, and I know that my students are learning. But I can also say that I haven't worked this hard probably since my first year teaching 20 years ago. It's crazy. But I do have three concerns about reopening. The first one really is what was just said, which is that I'm worried that our emotional need to return to the classroom is pushing decisions that are not well thought out. We need to have a plan in place before we set dates instead of setting dates and then hoping everything works out. And it really felt for the last 2 weeks like that's what we did. We also need to really be considering, given the current health conditions and the requirements which we need to meet, wearing masks, the HVAC system, social distancing, what the best education is going to be. Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be remote or some combination of that? And really think through that. And then finally, I think this is important because during my 20 years in the district, One thing I've always enjoyed is that teachers, admin, the classified staff, and the board have really worked together with the goal of providing the best education. But I'm worried that we're doing damage to that relationship right now. A lot of teachers really don't feel like their voice is being heard. And a lot of people feel very disrespected and devalued. And I hope we can work together to change that going forward. We still have a chance to adopt a data-driven, deliberate, and successful approach to the rest of the school year in dealing with reopening questions and how we do remote learning. And I hope we can do that. And I hope the next time that I'm addressing the board will be like my previous times when we've been celebrating debate championships or other successes. But I do appreciate you hearing me out tonight.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for your teaching with our district. Next up, Christina Bartholet. Hi, Christina.
Hi. Hi, my name is Christina Bartholet, and I'm a teacher at Goodman. I am very concerned about the push to resume in-person learning too quickly for as many students as possible without gathering input from teachers about whether they feel comfortable returning to school. I'm speaking to you tonight because I want you to understand the angst that each individual teacher has about the decision to return to the classroom. Let me be very clear up front. I'm not telling you any of this because I'm special or unique. I bet if you actually sat down and had a conversation with a teacher to find out what is going on in their life right now, then you would hear hundreds of unique stories just as important as mine. But nobody at the district level seems to be asking, so I'm done waiting. I'm here to tell you my concerns. I want to focus on an issue that has not been addressed by the district. When schools reopen, it's not my life at risk, but also the lives of my parents whom I live with. I want to talk really briefly about my childhood so you can understand what is informing my experience of this crisis. I'm a child of divorced parents and my mom remarried when I was a baby, so I grew up having 3 parents. My older brother and I got to visit our dad whenever we wanted, but we lived with my mom and stepdad. My stepdad supported 5 kids on a corrections officer salary, meaning I grew up in poverty. My stepdad got brain cancer when I was in high school and had been on disability ever since. My mom went back to work to support us. My parents did everything they could to make sure my siblings and I never went without, and I became the first in my family to go to college and graduate. When I was 21, my biological dad died unexpectedly, and it was the most traumatic experience of my life. In response, my older brother and I wanted to make sure my mom and stepdad were taken care of. We worked really hard and 2 years ago bought a house together where I share a basement apartment with my parents. To us, it was the right thing to do given their deteriorating health, but now it is a constant point of anxiety because they both have the highest risk of COVID. In March, my mom was ordered to work from home indefinitely because she was so high risk. She has COPD, and when she caught pneumonia 10 years ago, she had to be placed on a ventilator and put in a medically induced coma for a week. She has never fully recovered. My stepdad had a stroke a couple years ago and has been battling cancer for the last year. I fear what COVID would do to either of them. Now I'm scared that because I work as a teacher, I could catch it and give it to them, possibly resulting in their deaths and the burden of knowing that I was partially guilty in causing that. How do you recover from that? Some of you may say I'm catastrophizing, but my experience of growing up in poverty, surrounded by trauma, led me to learn the worst things happen to the most vulnerable in our society. So when you ask us to return to school, you're not just gambling with the lives of teachers and students, you're gambling with the lives of our family members, including my mom and dad. I will be the first to admit remote learning is an imperfect system, but so is our public education system. I want to commit myself to remote learning and making it the best it can be for me and students until it is safer to return to school. Please help us and listen to what we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Next up, we have Carrie Gulbranson. Excuse me, Carrie. Hi, Carrie. I think you're muted, but. Hi, Carrie. Just unmute. Perfect. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, my name is Carrie Gulbranson, and I've been with the Peninsula School District for 8 years now. And this is gonna be really emotional for me. I've always been really proud to be part of this district. And right now I feel like we are not being heard. Teachers are not being heard. Excuse me. We were told on September 11th that we would be in person. And this was only an hour before families were notified. Until today, I had not received any information about who or what kids would be in my classroom. And yesterday I was pulled into a meeting where I found out that a teacher in my building is being moved to another building 2 days before opening back up. That is a lot of stress to put on a teacher. This wasn't even discussed with the teachers that it affected. Instead, it was brought up in a whole K1 meeting. Since losing that first grade teacher, that brought us down to two first grade teachers. And that meant that they had to take on extra students. Even though their capacity is only 15, they were asked to be creative and try to fit in 18. Now, my team was amazing, and we were creative, and we decided to do a K1 split so that would not have to happen. But we should not have been asked to fit 18 students in a room with a capacity of 15. I received some of my PPE today. It is not up to LNI standards. We did not get the N95 masks. And I don't know if you have heard, but Tacoma has delayed their start date due to this, because the PPE we have and has been considered appropriate is not appropriate, and we have none. I have masks for children who forget their masks, but they are adult sized. And I was told to be creative and tie them in knots to make them fit their faces. This is comical, but not appropriate. I have a certain amount of magic and creativity, and I am depleted. I can't do any more. My room is safe. I am ready, but I don't believe that the district is ready for this. There are no safety measures for our buses. We were asked about, that was asked earlier, and students are going to be put on a bus without knowing if they have a fever, and you're asking 5-year-olds to carry an attestation form to remember to give that to us.
If you have a wrap-up statement, we'd appreciate that. We've got other speakers.
Okay, I am just saddened by the lack of support that the district has provided, the lack of communication, and the insistence that teachers just need to be creative and make everything work.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, Katie O'Neill.
Hi guys.
Hi,
my
Kate.
name is Kate. Hi. My name is Katie Strother, and this is my 3rd year teaching kindergarten at Minter Creek Elementary. I love my job so much. I love exactly what I do, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. But lately I've been baffled by what our district has done to our community and our staff. Our families have been asking for in-person schooling because their children need the social interactions, and I agree. School would be the best place for our kids, but the district is not communicating what school actually looks like to our families. The district keeps saying it is safe. You aren't telling families that their 5 and 6-year-olds, their babies, are going to be sat at isolated desks 6 feet apart. There is no plexiglass. They can't talk to other kids. They can't play or work together at all. They are to face forward all day with masks on. They aren't able to use my dramatic play centers, the kitchens, the sensory tables, the puppet shows, or anything like that because I can't disinfect them. No going to PE to play a new game. No going to music to play instruments. No special projects in art. No hands-on activities in science. My room, my physical space is safe. I have worked 12-hour days and spent hundreds of my own dollars to do so. I have been working tirelessly to squeeze 15 desks into my room, and I'm still asked to squeeze in more if necessary. The desks I have in there can't be shifted more than a centimeter from where they are, or it won't be safe anymore. I have desks shoved into the back corner of my room because that is the only space that I have left. How would you feel if it was your child that was shoved into the back corner of my room where they can't even see the board? I am disgusted that I have waited since Friday, September 11th at 6 p.m. until this afternoon
to receive a plan of what school looks like that gives me one more day, whereas I have been told by a higher up in this district 3 days, including my weekend, to have everything ready by Monday. I am disgusted that my colleagues were asked and forced to move rooms and even schools yesterday to be ready by Monday. The district was advised against doing this remote and in-person model because the staffing was not affordable, but the district chose to do it anyways, and now students' relationships with their teachers are damaged and broken. Shame on you. Yes, my room, my physical space is safe, or so the district says, but it is not ready for these innocent babies to come back and thrive. And no amount of my teacher magic can make this child prison feel any more like a school. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Next up, we have Mary West. Hi,
Good
Mary.
evening. Hi, I'm Mary Morales West. I'm a speech and language pathologist in the district. I just want to give you a little bit of background on what speech therapists do. You know, we work with all realms of communication, not just our speech sounds, but voice, stuttering, fluency, language delays and impacts, and that includes social language skills for our students with autism, and that's both verbal and nonverbal struggles that they may have, and our hearing impaired students, and our students who require augmentative communication devices. So the realm of the communication areas that we work with is quite expanded. If one does not have communication available to them, we are removing their voices. We're taking that away from them. Our role is always to help all of our students to engage and participate in their communication in whatever modality that they need, using clear and effective communications throughout their school day that follows through to their home and community. When a student struggles with reading or writing, you don't see that, but when a student can't communicate, the world is shut off to them. Thinking in that realm, as a speech therapist, I want to see my kids. But we're back to the safety and health precautions. And when I look at my office, it has no ventilation whatsoever. There's no opening other than the door. My room is directly across from the COVID isolation room. I'm at high risk for a number of reasons. I've lost 2 teacher colleagues in the state. I've lost 2 cousins, the most recent one 3 weeks ago. I love what I do, but I won't lose my life for it. And I don't expect any staff or student or family to put themselves at risk. We're working hard with the district to ensure proper protocols are in order, but I don't believe we're ready yet. We've made great strides, but we still have work to do. Tacoma School Districts just announced that the L&I department said they cannot open because they don't have the proper masks, the N95 masks. Now, back to the communication piece, we can't use those and be doing therapy appropriately. To make a real difference with our kids, we've got to be creative, absolutely. The nation, the world, has been using platforms such as Presence Learning. Several of our surrounding districts have done that to provide speech and language therapy.
Mary, if you'd like to make a closing statement.
I would like to encourage our district, 1, to put a pause until we're totally ready to start schools, to make sure that we have every precaution in order to keep everyone safe. And
Thank
2,
you, Mary.
Thank
you, Mary.
Into Presence Learning for our therapists. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next is Barbara Lucas. Barbara? Hi, Barbara.
Hello, how are you? Sorry, I'm gonna flip
Good,
that
you're
switch
good.
there.
We
There we
can
go.
hear you.
Great. Hi,
And
I'm Barb
Elsie?
Vukas. I'm many aspects. I am a mother, I'm a community member, I'm an educator, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt. I am many things and I wear many hats. I am also the treasurer of the PEA. I've had the privilege in the last 10 days of visiting the elementary schools here in our district and working with the team that was applauded tonight for all of their hard work. And I appreciate that Dan acknowledged that we were part of that group. And I would like to say and make a very strong impassioned plea that you slow this train down before it collides into a brick wall. The district members on the team are wonderful human beings and they worked extremely hard. But without our partnership, we would not be in the place that we're at today. It takes a partnership of educators and systems people to come together to ensure that safety is there. But safety is one aspect of the work that we do. It's the social emotional aspect of our children's development and the ability for educators to come to work and do their job in the way that everyone perceives it should be done. We all know it's a different world. We all know that education can't look the same. I think parents might reconsider sending their children to school if they knew that there are about 3 hours of instructional time, which doesn't include the many minutes of hand washing. So we're all running around like chickens in order to meet the needs of people who think their kid is coming to school. Your children are not coming to school. You're coming to highly paid babysitters that are going to work as hard as they can to educate children, but in very difficult circumstances. My fear is that you're going to continue on this pathway. And if you believe that the 2 weeks, and if you think everybody working 12 hours a day straight through for the 2 weeks is enough to prepare for another transition, it is not. You don't own enough desks. You don't own enough of anything to separate children. There aren't enough materials in this universe, and they can't even be purchased. They can be, but are you going to wait 6 weeks and another 8 weeks? Yes, you need to. It's time to slow down and to experiment with kindergartners and first graders. Yeah, that doesn't seem right to me. And I think it doesn't seem right to a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you all for adhering to the 3 minutes. I know that's a fast time, but we had a lot of speakers tonight. So thank you, Barbara, for speaking tonight. With that, we close public comment. Moving on to item 6.1, approval of final acceptance of the Gig Harbor High School shot put relocation project. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Chuck and seconded by David to approve item 6.1. All in favor, say aye.
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 We got all aye. Opposed? Item 6.1 has been approved. Item 6.2, approval of amendment number 1 to the Integris Architecture contract for the work at Artendale. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Natalie and seconded by Chuck to approve item 6.2. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Item 6.2 has been approved. Item 6.3, approval of amendment number 1 to Integris Architecture contract to work at elementary school number 9. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Chuck? It's been moved by David and seconded by Chuck to approve item 6.3. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Item 6.3 has been approved. Item 6.4, approval of Peninsula School District 6-year capital facilities plan 2020-2026. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, it has been moved by Lori and seconded by Natalie to approve item 6.4. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 6.4 has been approved. Item 6.5, approval of 2020-2021 VIBA Plan MOU with Peninsula Education Association. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
I've got David. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by David and seconded by Natalie to approve item 6.5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Item 6.5 has been approved. Item 6.6, approval of the 2020-2021 board meeting calendar. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved by Chuck and seconded by Lori to approve item 6.6. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Item 6.6 has been approved. Item 6.7, approval of 2020-21 interagency agreement with Crossroads. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
I've got Natalie and David, would you second?
Second.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been moved by Natalie and seconded by David to approve item 6.7. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Item 6.7 has been approved. Item 6.8, approval of PSD Early Learning Program agreement for 2020-2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Lori and seconded by Natalie to approve item 6.8. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Item 6.8 has been approved. We now move on to item 6.9, selection of superintendent search firm. As previously announced by the board, with Dr. Jarvis's superintendent's contract expiring in June, the board is proceeding with a superintendent search for this fall. By starting this search now, our district will be among the first wave of superintendent openings for 2021-22. We anticipate an excellent field of candidates. Also, by starting our search now, we hope to identify a superintendent in a timely manner to allow a new superintendent to be prepared for decisions regarding the 2021-2022 school year. To commence our search, we've asked the district to put out a request for proposal for a superintendent search for consulting firms. We received proposals from 3 firms: JG Consulting out of Texas, Hazard Young Associates out of Illinois, and Northwest Leadership Associates out of Washington. I note that Northwest Leadership was the consulting firm that the district used, the board of directors used, in 2016. Board members have had the time to review all 3 proposals and are prepared to discuss and potentially make decisions tonight regarding the selection of a firm. To the board, we have a couple of options tonight of how we can proceed after discussing these firms. We could decide to interview 1 or more of these firms for consideration. These interviews could take place the week of October 5th. Or we could decide to hire a firm tonight if there is a consulting firm that stands out as a unanimous choice by the board members. Selecting a firm tonight will allow the board to have initial process and timeline discussions with the consulting firm the week of October 5th. Before I proceed, I will ask Dr. Jarvis, is there a clarification on how we can have consultant firm interviews or discussions the week of October 5th?
We have a board study session scheduled for October 8th. We could reserve, we have 1 other topic for that study session. So we could certainly add a second topic if that would work. And that'd be probably the easiest that's already been scheduled. Or we could ask you if you had a date that you would prefer to spend more time with the search consultant. and schedule a special meeting for that purpose. I think those are your two best options.
Okay, with the outcome of our discussion tonight, I think we can make a decision on dates then. Thank you. With that, I open up for discussion of the three firms presented to us tonight. So again, JG Consulting, Hazard Young Associates, and Northwest Leadership Associates. Would anyone like to make any comments on any of these firms?
I'll start. If it's my understanding, Dr. Jarvis, the board is not held to any, if we decided that we wanted to make a decision tonight, we're allowed to do that. There's nothing holding us back that we absolutely have to interview each firm.
That's correct.
Okay. So with that said, I know we had more firms that put their name in the hat the last time we did this. I know one of them merged with another firm. And so, you know, it would have been nice to have a couple extra than just three. And I know we got one late this afternoon. From my reading the proposals, of the three, only one of them is within the state of Washington. So somewhat local. The one in Texas, being from the state of Texas, I should be biased, but I'm not. I sort of have some angst having a search firm based, you know, halfway across the country. And also they've never interviewed a superintendent for the state of Washington or placed one here. And I think it's important that the search firm is familiar with the state of Washington and more importantly, our local community. The new one we got in this afternoon is home based out of Illinois. For the same reasons that I just mentioned, I prefer that our search firm be in the state of Washington. So that's my opinion. I personally would be prepared to make a decision tonight if the other board members were so inclined. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'd just like to make a clarification, David, on one thing that you said. The proposal from HYA consultant firm, the district did receive that yesterday by the deadline. It's just the board didn't receive it until this afternoon. So thank you for quickly reviewing it and thinking about that for tonight, but the district did get it in time. Other thoughts on the firms that submitted proposals?
Well, I tend to agree with David that it would be nice to have a local firm that we could communicate with and has experience here in Washington State. So I tend to want to follow David on that. Yeah.
Okay. Lori?
Yeah, but comment to that same point. I think local isn't necessarily better, I think in most cases, but I did notice the one firm in their list of references, every school they had recently worked with in hiring a superintendent, every district was in the state of Texas or in the South, and there wasn't a single district even in the Western United States. So that to me was a concern only in that I do think you don't have to be a local firm, but I do think it's important that you have an understanding of the district and the area. So that was just my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Natalie, comments?
Yeah, I will just, the proposals all look pretty similar in the timeline. I appreciate this being my first opportunity to go through this experience, what that will look like. And they all had pretty impressive plans, but looking at the accessibility of having people come in and work with our community to make sure that we're choosing a person that is best for everyone. I guess my concerns would be how accessible a firm from Texas or Illinois is. I like the outreach looking for applicants across the country, but it seems that we might be zooming through most of this anyway, but it does seem like someone who is at least within a couple hours drive might be a better fit.
Okay, so I'm going to comment on all three, and then we can have further discussion. But so I agree. I think the idea of having a national reach is good. So with the Hazard Young Associates, I do appreciate their national reach. However, their national proposal had other districts listed in it. So the kind of personal touch is kind of taken away when you do go to a national firm, I think. So I didn't know that I appreciated having other districts listed in our proposal. I like their flow chart of how we are going to move through the process, and also what are the kind of the scope of work, what the consulting firm will do and what the board of directors will do. I like that. Even though I do like flow charts, theirs was a little hard to follow compared to the others. I do believe that Hazard Young and also JG Consulting did make a lot of references to how they've adapted their work to the COVID situation and some of the specifics on how they would manage that. So I was encouraged by that. I think Northwest Leadership alluded to it, but not necessarily how they are making that practice in their day-to-day work. So I did like that approach of that, but and then for JG Consulting, all three had a guarantee of 2 years. So if we do not have the superintendent in 2 years, they'll do a search for us for free, or they will refund our money, which is nice. One thing that concerned me about JG Consulting is their sequence of how they are going to approach stakeholders. I think the JG Consulting was going to approach the directors first and individually interview them. I think what I liked about Northwest Leadership is they're going to reach out to all of our other types of consultants. So, you have our staff, our principals, our outside firms, our outside clubs, our parents, all of our different stakeholders, I think, would have the opportunity to do some different types of focus groups, and they gather information from them. And then I think it would be a more appropriate discussion then with the board, so they can drill down on some of those concerns. And so I really liked their sequence, Northwest Leadership's sequence, versus the other two where they were really diving in with the directors first. What else about JG? I did like JG Consulting. I've already alluded to it, but the different ways they're looking at the stakeholder breakdowns, where they have the internal, the external, the community, and the auxiliary groups. So regardless of which firm we go with, I kind of like looking at groups like that, so you can really hone in on what's important to those different types of groups. Specifically about Northwest Leadership, we have used them in the past. David and I we had the opportunity to work with them. The feedback, while we didn't have a formal debrief from the community, the feedback I received from teachers, from parents, from administrators was that process was really well done. All stakeholders felt that they were a part of it and had value in the process. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate that Northwest Leadership understands our community. While we have the Gig Harbor and the Key Peninsula communities, we're all one, but yet they understand all those nuances, which I think is really important for our community. They have a very good defined scope of work, what they're going to be doing as a search firm, and we're going to be doing as a board of directors. Their cost is the lowest of the three, which I liked. They also had their guarantee. Their timeline was very detailed in the process of how we're going to go through this whole sequence of events. Again, the involvement of stakeholders was very good last time, and they really worked that. And they also offered a board superintendent workshop after our new superintendent is identified and on board, really working with the collaboration of our superintendent and our board of directors and how we work together. I think it's really important to get that off and running on the right foot. So those are my comments on all three. With that, did people have other comments? So then I ask, is there?
I would agree with everything you said, and what the others said about, they're all, qualified and capable, obviously. But I do believe that the one that's primarily done all their searches in the Southwest and the Texas area sort of limits them. And the fact they're just trying to branch out to the Northwest for the very first time, I prefer that experiment take place somewhere else. As far as Hazard Young, Proposal 101 is make sure you edit your proposal and make sure that you have your client's name in the proposal and not someone else's. And to me, that tells me there's a lack of attention to detail, or maybe they heard about our search at the very last minute and threw a proposal together just to get it in the door. So that to me is an important thing that I'm glad you pointed out, but I didn't know we were going to go into that much detail about them tonight, but that's okay that you did.
Open it up again for more discussion.
I know.
But if we're going to make a decision or potentially make a decision, I wanted to get all that.
I agree. Yeah. And I agree, after what happened when we did our last superintendent search, I thought it went really smoothly. I like the fact that they brought the community in and polled the community, the teachers and all the staff and everybody. And I agree with that approach. It really, really went very well last time. So what do you need from us, Madam President?
So with the discussion, is there a desire to have more than one firm come in for interviews? Is anyone interested in having any of them interviewed or potentially working with any of them?
I'm more inclined just to go with the Northwest leadership and get it moving.
That we could have enough of an impression without interviewing to go forward.
Okay.
Unless it's going to significantly hamper the timeline, but my understanding, I know there was some talk earlier today that we could speed up the process, but I think we have enough time in the timeline we had planned to interview. That's just my opinion.
And I don't think it was a matter of speeding up the process. It was more of if the board was confident in their decision, we would just move forward rather than bring in a firm that we weren't even considering. So with that, I asked Lori, which firm of the three firms would you consider bringing in? Which two then?
I would like to see us interview the firm from Illinois and the Northwest leadership.
So that's Hazard,
Yeah.
Hazard Young.
Yes. Because I think it's important to look at one firm that's not local, and by a local firm, it doesn't mean they're interviewing local only people. It just my attraction to that on the one hand is that they understand the district, because this is a unique district and area, and I think a knowledge of that is important. But the firm from Illinois, Hazard, had hired someone from in the Kitsap Peninsula, one of either CK or South K.
Yeah. Okay.
So they know the area, and so I'd like to see us interview too.
Okay. And just one point of clarification with Northwest leadership, because they send this out to over 3,000 districts. So they are looking nationally as well. So know with whichever firm we choose, it will be a national based search,
Right.
Regardless of where the firm is located.
Right. No, I understand.
Yep. So any thoughts on, I mean, if somebody likes JG Consulting over, we would bring in all three, or are we interested in?
Are you Chuck gonna say something?
I'm just wondering if everyone is, I mean, there's a board member and I think it's a valid point that we interview. Even though it sounds like most were leaning towards Northwest leadership, there is an interest of a board to have interviews happen. And so the choices would be Northwest leadership and Hazard Young. If we are
I
fine
would
with
say,
that, pardon?
if you want me to be 100% honest, I already pointed out why I was not so inclined to ask Hazard Young in, because of their proposal mentioning other school districts and not ours. And I just thought that was a lack of attention to detail that would be troubling for me. And I think unless it's going to be a Zoom meeting to interview them, which it might be in October, but I'd hate to see them get on a plane and fly over here and interview, knowing that they would probably have to really wow me to change my mind over the impression they made from their proposal. So
I will point out, and Natalie, not to expose too much, but Natalie may not be available on the October for personal medical reasons on October 8th. So we will be making that decision without Natalie, or she may be able to Zoom in. So just that is a consideration as well.
I would say if we're going to open it up and do interviews and we limit it to like a half hour each for the interviews, let's invite all three. If we're going to do it, we might as well. And I assume they would be Zoom meetings. We'll probably put together a list of questions that we would have.
We'll actually have them do a presentation to us and ask questions based off of those presentations rather than generically write up questions. I'm inclined more to make a decision tonight based off of our successful work with Northwest in the past and the comments heard tonight, but we'll honor having an interview as long as you are genuinely considering the other two firms.
Okay, comment?
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, this is a pretty simple statement, but oftentimes you can learn a lot in an interview and things are not always as they seem on paper. That has happened to me even in some of the recent leadership interviews that I've sat through. So I think it's important to give people a chance to present to you, because sometimes there's just a fit that you wouldn't have seen perhaps on paper.
Okay.
So that's just my opinion on it. I wouldn't be opposed to, I would actually enjoy interviewing all three. They all sound quite different. I don't want to waste anybody's time if everyone else on the board has already an opinion that may not be the way to go, but that's what I would like to see.
So I ask again, Chuck, you did offer up then also JG Consulting. Is that a firm that we would genuinely be considering? Because if so, then we can do all three and do 30-minute interviews and learn from that. I would request Zoom meetings to make it easy, and also for Natalie to potentially participate.
So I lean towards Northwest leadership because they are a local firm and they do a national search, and we've got a history with them. But if we were going to do interviews, I would say let's do all three. I'm not necessarily inclined to go that direction, but if we were, it's that simple. We might get surprised. You don't know.
Okay. Well, we have the choice of going with majority or unanimous, and I would prefer at this time to do unanimous. So with that, Dr. Jarvis, we will not be making a decision on a search firm tonight, but we ask that the district arrange for the 3 firms to make a 30 to 45 minute presentation to allow for questions to the board. Actually, a 30-minute presentation with 15-minute questions to the board on October 8th.
Tanya and I will carry that out.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Yes.
thanks to the board for the discussion.
Yeah, is 30 minutes a normal time for them to do a presentation?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. Is there a discussion on the consent agenda prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Fantastic, thank you. It's been moved by Lori and seconded by Natalie to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, David. The consent agenda has been approved. Sorry about that, David. Tonight, I am going to ask for board discussion or comments. If any board member would like to share any comments or thoughts. We haven't done this for a while, but so I open it up to anybody that has anything to share. David?
I'll go first. I just, as I drive around town and look at the progress being made on the elementary schools, I just think it's really amazing to watch those going up, and they look fantastic, and I just can't wait whenever they're finished next year, and hopefully this all goes away that we have, and our kids can go to school in these new buildings. And then I had the privilege of being able on Saturday to attend the Harbor Hope Center for Girls ribbon cutting. It's a center for homeless girls in the Peninsula School District. And we already had one for boys. And so I think a lot of people don't realize there is a need for that in our local community. So to be able to be a part of the ribbon cutting for that was an honor for me this weekend.
Thank you for going to that, David, and representing us. Anyone else?
I'll make a quick comment. I just have been very glad to be in touch with my own children's teachers and checking in with them on how their first couple of weeks have been going. And I think at the beginning, everyone was a little nervous, a little frustrated with getting up to speed, but they've had really great feedback. The interactions with the kids, while not ideal, like we keep hearing, has been so much better than what we saw in the spring. And as a parent and as a board member, I appreciate the efforts that are going in to make it work. It's remarkable what has been accomplished. And a shout out to Gig Harbor High School. My kids were in yesterday, I think, to go pick up some supplies. It was the first time that my freshman has set foot inside of the building as a student there. And someone asked him what grade he was in when he was in the front office, and he said he was a freshman. And he said it was a little embarrassing how much attention they gave him to welcome a freshman, and wanted to make sure that he felt like he was a Tide and that he belonged there. And you know, it's embarrassing to a 14-year-old, but it is fantastic to a 14-year-old's parent that he was made to feel so welcome. So for all the smiles that they get and the genuine care that goes into serving these kids, it is met with sincere gratitude from me and my family.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, it's been fun watching my kids as well navigate remote learning, and it's been fun, different but fun. Chuck?
I just want to take a moment to apologize to you and any of the district other board members for bringing any additional problems about with my comment. It wasn't meant to be racial or anything else. It was meant to just be a part of the conversation, and I'm sorry it was taken in that way, and I'm sorry that we had to go through any additional grief during this time of all the other grief we have.
Thank you, Chad. Okay, I wanted to report back to the board that our board reps have been identified at our 3 high schools. And so they'll be meeting with some of us board members individually before they're presented to the board on October 8th. So we look forward to having those student voices on our board going forward. So they should be starting October 8th with us. And, you know, I just, it's been said many times tonight, but I just echo my comments earlier about the work that's been done by this board, by the district, by our teachers, by our parents, and by our kids. This is a challenging time. You individually may feel very strongly about the situation one way. We've got as many voices on the other end of the argument or on the other end of the opinion. And so it's challenging. We're torn daily, hourly, literally. So please, let's remember why we're here. We're here for the kids, and wherever they are, if they're remote, if they're in school, we're here for them. And so let's put a positive face to them, wherever that may be, and remember that this is their time to be educated and they don't get a second chance. So I'm on the board, and so is everyone else, for the kids. So let's everyone put our best face and foot forward for these kiddos. That's all they have. So I appreciate everyone trying to do that. Any other comments? Lori?
Yeah, I have a comment, just really to echo that. I noticed this especially in tonight's meeting, even though we've all been a part of several Zoom meetings for months. I find it very difficult in a Zoom meeting to communicate, or as a board member in general, that how much I care about what is being said or what is being sent. It's very difficult to communicate via email. We receive heartfelt emails on many topics, as you just said, Deb, and every one of them really hits me hard. And it's also noteworthy that we can get several in the same day that have completely opposite perspectives. You know, how dare you do this, or how dare you not do this, in a very heartfelt reason why. On top of that, it's challenging, I think, for all of us on the board, because we really are not involved directly in most of what the daily workings of the district is. And so I applaud, while I'm thinking of it, everyone, as has been said, who's working tirelessly, the district administrators and staff, and, you know, as we've said before, the teachers we are at the same time hearing tons of great comments about teachers and things that are working well remotely, and the teachers that are working so hard to get their rooms ready to come back, and just so many different things. But I felt really, especially tonight, because we had some very emotional persons address the board, and it is always our policy to limit time, which always feels awkward when people are very emotional.
Sorry.
And also, it's hard to know how to respond to an emotional speaker via a Zoom screen when we're not even in the same room. And I just wanted to mention that people are heard, that the teachers' concerns are heard, the parents' concerns are heard, students that are the ones that are old enough to email us and say what they feel they need, we're hearing them as well. I also want to say, on just a personal last note, that, as many of you know, I work in an industry where I have personally been working as an essential worker the whole time since March, as a flight attendant on a crowded airplane several times a week with hundreds of people and thousands of people in the airport and hotels and vans and trains. and buses and wearing masks and have not been ill, and it has not been perfect. And so I know how scary it is for staff and parents. I do, but I also know that it can be done. And I shouldn't say scary. I should say I know how it seems intimidating, and it's not right for every person. But if it is right for your family and you, I guess I'm just trying to be encouraging. Has not been that scary for me to work in that environment, and I continue to go, and I look forward to it. So everybody keep on keeping on, and hopefully we can have every kid back in school as soon as possible.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, so our next meeting of the school board will be a study session on Thursday, October 8th, unless we have an earlier meeting with our interviews, but it will be at 6 p.m. and it will be in person versus virtual, or if it's going to be in person or virtual is unknown at this time. We will find out. If there's nothing further, no executive session tonight, Dr. Jarvis?
There is none.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned at 8:08 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.